Welcome to Friendeavor, the podcast, the weekly podcast where we explore the highs and lows of friendship with your hosts, Danielle and Kayla.
As we journey through life, our friendships often evolve and change, ebb and flow, and sometimes even come to an end. Danielle and I are lifelong advocates for the power of friendship, and we are here to guide all of us through the many challenges and joys that come with building and maintaining strong, meaningful connections with those around us.
Join us each week as we deep dive into the intricacies of friendship, from navigating conflicts to fostering new relationships and everything in between. With insightful interviews, personal anecdotes, and expert advice, Friendeavor is the perfect podcast for anyone looking to strengthen their bonds with the people they love.
So, whether you are on the go, taking care of chores, or just settling in, get ready to explore the world of friendship on Friendeavor, the podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Friendeavor. I'm your host, Danielle.
I'm Kayla.
And we are so thrilled that you have decided to hang out with us this week. But I gotta say, I'm even more thrilled that our guest is here to hang out with us this week. Back at it again for season 2. Please welcome Monique McMurray.
Hi, guys!
We are thrilled that you would even agree to come back, let alone for this topic. But you are the foremost expert, and the title of this episode is Always the Bridesmaid.
I am howling.
But it's just that. That's it. It's just Always the Bridesmaid.
Yeah, can you not put Never the Bridesmaid?
It's just Always the Bridesmaid.
If I accidentally walk into oncoming traffic tomorrow, it is your fault.
Oh, my word.
Because you are basically the foremost expert on being a bridesmaid.
I have been there and done that a lot of times.
If you had to guess without counting, how many weddings do you think you've been in?
Well over 10.
10.
Well over 10.
Over 10.
We'll just keep it at well over 10.
I have been in, excluding like when I was a little kid, you know, like the flower girl era, I've been in 2. So, Kayla, how about you?
Yeah, probably like 7.
Okay, so we have a lot of bridesmaid experience in this room. And we're going to dive into it. We're going to talk about the nitty gritty. We're going to get behind the scenes. We're going to see what causes a stressful wedding, what causes a peaceful wedding, what causes a bridezilla, how you can avoid being a bridezilla. If you are dealing with a bridezilla, we're going to even help you through that. So stick around to the end because Monique is here and you never know what's going to happen.
Monique is here. You have nothing to fear.
I wish we could have subtitles.
Everything to fear.
So safe to say we've got quite the expert here on weddings. So Monique, what was the first wedding you were ever in?
The first wedding that I remember well was in 2003. I was in Annie Dominguez's wedding.
That's so cute.
2003. How old were you in 2003?
You know what?
Oh, can we not ask that?
Yeah, you know what?
A
lady never tells.
You were...
I was old enough to walk. Let's just say that.
Okay. That works. So, you had a role in this wedding?
Yes.
Okay, what was your first wedding that you were, like, a bridesmaid in?
Ooh. Man, I should have made a list. Okay, so the first one I remember, again, I'm just skipping through because there were so many. Becca Terrazas. I was a junior bridesmaid in her wedding.
Okay.
There were half the church. We were all in her wedding. It was great. It was really cute. She had an Eiffel Tower. I loved it.
I looked through her wedding album one time, and one of the group photos was split into two different photos because they couldn't all fit.
Literally, it was like all a battle cry, and then like junior battle cry, and then me because I'm tone deaf, so I was never in there. But I just, we were all there.
Yeah. Okay, so from a young age, weddings have been a part of basically every couple years, sometimes every year, you're in a wedding.
Yes. So
what goes through your mind? Now, listen, former brides, if Monique was in your wedding, just,
Now, to be fair, not everyone, I've been in a lot of weddings as well of coworkers. For some reason, my coworkers love to have me in the wedding.
You're just a universal love.
There you go. Okay,
Yeah.
I wouldn't go that far. Even I wouldn't go that far. But
anyways, we're not calling anyone specifically out. These are just lessons, tips, and tricks of ways that you can navigate if you're going to be in a wedding or if you are having your own wedding. But Monique, when first thing goes on your mind when someone asks you to be your wedding, whether it's a really close friend or what you thought was an acquaintance?
Okay, so I would say the first 20 plus years of my life, it was, oh my word, yes, absolutely. What an honor. Even now, it is definitely still an honor. But the more weddings you're in, obviously, the more things that you learn. And so I do try to be more thoughtful in accepting that role.
Yeah, it's a big job.
It really is.
And I feel like the younger you are when you start doing that, the less you know. So we're going to go ahead and deviate from Monique's experience into my own really quickly. And then Kayla, if you have your own experience, we can tag in with that as well. The first wedding I was a bridesmaid in, I was 16. And it was a friend who was like 2 years older than me. No, she probably was 19. She was a young bride. And none of us had any idea what it meant to be a bridesmaid, what it meant to have a wedding. We were just a bunch of friends who were chums together, okay? So we didn't do anything for her. Our friend's mom, the friend who, she wasn't even in the wedding, but our friend's mom, who just loves us and like she knew what was supposed to happen with weddings, the bride didn't even know. None of us knew what was expected of us.
But that makes sense because of the ages.
Right? We're just there for a rip-roaring good time. So the friend's mom hosts her bridal shower. We have our version of a bachelorette party by having a sleepover at the friend's mom's house. She buys all the food for us. We are just rip-roaring, looking at memes. I mean, we have no idea the traditions and surprise that comes with that. The bride wasn't even disappointed. None of us knew. We were so young. We were just friends. So like, oh yeah, she's getting married. So we're playing games, but like normal games, not weird games. And we had a great time.
That's amazing that you have that.
I was like, I look back at it now and I'm like, oh my God. If she had any expectations of that weekend, she never let us know. Like it was just a rip-roaring good time.
Well, and I think times were different now. Everyone, especially with social media, and everyone has like their aesthetic that they want. Things are like very different. Like,
yeah, that's true.
I had a bride that she's not in church at all. She was a coworker. She wanted everyone to have a certain hair length. I got away with it, obviously, because I was the only one that was allowed to wear sleeves. But down to everything. She did not want you to be overweight. So many things. So many things.
You need to be poked in the eyes if you're trying to dictate.
There was a lot. Well, and she got engaged, and she was engaged for about a year or a year and a half, quite a while. And so she had expectations from the get, and she would check in like every 6 months.
Listen, in 18 months, y'all better be snatched.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. That's wild. So yeah, that is a very good point, because this was 12 years ago that this wedding took place, and things would be definitely different today, probably for even that bride. But Instagram was really new, and even then it was for its original purpose, just sharing pictures of your friends, of your food. It wasn't like a multi-billion-dollar mogul try to tell you how to live your life thing, right? And so that was my first wedding, was just hanging out with my friends, getting a dress that was not it, but that's what the bride wanted, so we did it. But yeah.
Kayla, do you have something on your heart?
I don't know if the mic picked that up, but you know what? I just turned to Monique and I said the name of someone's.
She did, and you all heard it. We were called the Jetson Girls for probably still to this day.
And anytime someone made a comment about it, my mom said, "It's like Vogue."
Does your mom know what Vogue is?
Don't know.
Okay.
I am howling. Not does your mom know what Vogue is? That just.
Kayla, tell us about your first wedding. Probably one of your sisters.
Yeah. So my very first wedding was Chris's, and I was the miniature bride, and it was so cute. And I have great memories from that day because I was old enough to remember it.
Yeah.
But like my first experience as a bridesmaid was actually my friend Emma Millington. She lives in Canada, so that was a really fun experience, getting to fly out there. And by the time I got married, I had already been a bridesmaid several times, and I had older sisters and, like, friends who, like, I consider most of my bridal party to be, like, not dramatic. So I just thought it was going to be smooth sailing. I really did, because I really did. So, but there are things that you just, like, that nobody prepared me for. I mean, my sister did pull me aside, like, right when I got engaged, and she's like, listen, I know, like, we have a really good team on our hands, but just so you know, weddings throw people off. Like, people just get dramatic during weddings. That's what it is. And I was like, oh, yeah, but, you know.
That's not going to happen here.
Yeah, we've got such a good group. No, it did. And it's just, it is. It's going to happen. Like, someone's going to get offended at something, and, you know.
You just have a bunch of people working together that typically don't do that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I think part of it is you have to go in. So once you say yes, you have to go in with the understanding that it's no longer about you.
Right.
But you do still have to set boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to go in and have a conversation with the bride, find out clear expectations. So usually before she asks, there's some idea. I've been in weddings where there's no idea, but there is some idea of what she wants, the dresses, everything, all of that. So there should be a ballpark figure. There should be, you know, okay, so on the day of my wedding, I need a cleanup crew. Like, you have to have things like that in order.
Yeah.
You can't, there's so many expectations. There has to be communication there. Somewhere someone has to sit down and say, okay, so what's the budget for this? Okay, what are the budgets for dresses? Is there a certain dress? Is there a certain shoe?
There's already enough surprises with
yes.
human behavior. Like, the more you can preemptively figure out, the better off you're going to be.
Well, and people think, too, like I said, most people do that, but some do not. I have been in weddings where it was just like, okay, I'm not sure what you guys should wear. And I think you should think of your bride's, like, body types and different things like that as well. You know, it was just like, yeah, get this dress. Well, then we get the dress and it doesn't work for anyone. So it's like, okay, scratch that. We're going to try this. Okay, well, that was not built in. That was not my expectation. So I did not have money set aside for a second dress. You know, so you need to sit down and just at least give a rough draft of expectations. The bride needs to give hers and the bridesmaid as well, you know.
Yeah.
So
there are so many things you learn. Like, I look back on my wedding so many times, just different things, and I'm like, why did I think that? Or why did I say that? Why did I do that? One of the things I did was I was trying to just make it so easy on all my bridesmaids. And I said, you guys can all pick out your own dresses. And here's the color palette. Just run it by me. And
would you like to add something, Monique?
No.
No?
I was just a spectator at your wedding. I was there for some moral support.
Okay. Well, I told them all to pick out their own dresses because in my head, that's what I thought was going to make it easier. Because, like you said, everyone's body types, everyone's style. Like, that's what I thought was going to make it easier. But no, it just was this long, drawn-out process because it was really hard for all my bridesmaids to find, like, something that fit all the criteria. Because I gave them a color palette, but then I also gave them, like, a neck style, sleeve length, whatever, and it was hard. So
yeah, speaking as one of those bridesmaids, my biggest concern was picking out a dress that worked for my body type, that fit the criteria, and that you wouldn't like it, because I was like, our styles are different. I mean, I'm not saying anything retrospectively, but I was like, that was my concern, is that, okay, she said we can pick out our own, but I could still theoretically pick out an ugly dress. Like, style's not my thing, you know? So that was checking the boxes, which is totally understandable that you had a vision, but being worried that, like, oh, what if the bride doesn't like it? So I sent you, like, 4 dresses. Remember, you're like, all of these will work. They're beautiful or whatever. I'm like, yeah, let's hope so. So, but, yeah.
But then that also does go back to what I was saying, because sometimes the brides will pick out the dress, but then a bridesmaid will be like, I don't like that, so I am going to do modifications to what I like. So if it's a flowy dress, I have also been in weddings where the bridesmaid will make it super tight and be like, this is what fits my body. But I'm like, no, ma'am, now you look completely different.
But then it's about
from the rest
you.
of us.
That's
right.
not how
And
it
you
is.
have to be like, okay, this is not maybe I don't always, I love you, Carissa. Maybe I don't always want to wear a point to the right of my head that I can see as I'm watching the bride come down.
I need you to, in detail, describe
Oh,
Talk
how
about
do you...
different era. This is like, what, 15 years ago?
2008.
2008. I
So,
would be
16.
more than happy. So, part of it, I will say, is not my dear friend Chris's doing. Okay. Someone made my dress, my skirt, and they were like, listen, I am a godly dressmaker. And I said, well, yes, ma'am, I'm a godly girl. Plus, look at us working together.
Dress wearer.
Yes. But I mean, when I say Sissy made it big, like, so, like, a little bit, it was a little bit too big because she said, I don't want to.
Okay, I am screaming laughing because Monique said who it was. Oops. Go back and edit.
But they are, I love them with my whole heart.
Very talented.
Very talented.
Yeah. And godly.
And godly, yes. The godliest, like, honestly.
Godly as heck.
Yes, like, it's God, then. Did you say that on?
No.
Are we going? Are we going?
Oh, we're going.
Oh, I am howling. Okay, so, you know, it's like God, Mother Teresa, boom, this person.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so they are like doing modifications. The same person did not do my modifications that did yours. Y'all's.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, you know, that's fine. The skirt is, you know, pretty mid-calf.
Okay.
And it has lots of layers. It's Dubiani silk. And it is like...
What on earth is
party
Dubiani silk?
flamingo pink.
Yes, I've seen photos.
And we have a point.
What do you mean a point? Like,
okay, so fabric? Like, you know the Jetsons?
The collar.
The collar pointed straight up.
Okay.
But my collar pointed and hung a little. Like, the point wouldn't quite stay. So it was hanging and you could see it out of your vision. Like, if you turned just...
I would have taken a pair of scissors.
Well, and the thing is everyone in that wedding had hair. Okay, all my life, I had to fight. Okay, this is all I got. And so they had big old updos. Carly, I mean, she was like 8 and had like eons of hair. Okay, I was the only one trying so hard. They had huge updos. When I tell you, I looked like a black mother. From a black church.
Word.
The amount of like pin curl rolls I had everywhere just trying to get my hair to look anything near anyone else's. I mean, I just hope nobody brings up a photo because my little dinky hair just was not doing what anybody else's was doing. But Carissa looked very beautiful, and that's all that matters.
All that matters.
Yeah. That is all that matters.
I forgot how we got to the dress conversation. Does anybody remember?
You wanted in detail
I did.
What our bridesmaid dresses
But
were
I
in Carissa's
forgot what we
wedding.
were talking about before that.
Oh, we were talking about the bridesmaids not making it all about themselves.
Yes,
so,
yes.
like, in that, I could have been like, I'm not wearing this Jetson thing. Instead, I'm going to go get a gold silk dress.
Yep.
Well, the absolute disrespect. If you feel like you could not do that style before the dress was ever made, you could have, you know, as devastating as it is, if it's that bad, you can step out and you don't even have to say why.
Yeah.
If it is that bad to where you just cannot imagine it and you're going to make a big deal and you're going to make everyone else miserable, including the bride, it's probably better just from the beginning to just, you know, nip it in the bud. You can do it very nicely, very sweetly. I am so sorry. I didn't realize I'm actually not going to be able to be in the wedding, but I want to help any way that I can. I love you. You're amazing. If there's anything I can help you do, I want to do that. Instead, I mean, I would value that. And I'm not even a bride. As a bridesmaid, as a fellow bridesmaid, I would value that over other things that people have done.
Let's talk about expectations. So, what do you think of, like, people... Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm thinking so many things. Have you guys ever seen it went viral, the bridesmaid who laid out an entire... Or the bride who laid out an entire plan, like, cost by cost, and it was, like, extravagant of what she expected. And she put it to her bridesmaids, just like, I totally understand if you can't do this, but people who are going to be in my wedding can do this. And you had to decide whether or not you were going to be able to do that.
I actually respect that. I did not see that, but...
It was extravagant, but I'm like...
She was up front.
She was up front.
Communicated.
There was two cams saying, like, why would you ever expect that of people? And then other people saying, well, at least she told them up front.
That's ridiculous because people come from different backgrounds. So in some backgrounds, if she is well off and she has surrounded, or not even she surrounded herself, if she's come up with people who are in that same category, her having a destination wedding in Rome and vacationing wherever is not going to be odd where she comes from.
Right.
But if she does have friends that is not their usual
feasible
to communicate, because some people can say they can get an extra job, they can do whatever, and if that's something that they choose to do. But communicating is key, because if you ask someone to be in your wedding and they have no idea what they're getting into, and then you spring it on them little by little, it could be diabolical.
Have you ever been in that situation, Mo?
I have.
How did that play out for you?
Disclaimer, no one be offended. You're happily married. I am happily your friend. We love each other in Jesus.
Amen.
Okay.
Amen.
Well,
it's a throat clear. Set us up for a good time.
I'm setting myself up for a good time. It was a childhood friend and is still a friend to this day. And, they had asked me to be a bridesmaid, and I was super excited for them that they were getting married. And I said, yes, of course, didn't really talk about it. And I hadn't been on social media very much at that point. And so I hadn't realized when they, had gotten engaged and all of that. I found out everything when they asked me to be in the wedding. I was so excited, to go to the wedding and see them get married and all that good stuff. And we get to the first planning session. And I realize at that planning session that, and again, this is absolutely nothing bad against anyone, but I realize, that there would not be a lot of help going forward in this particular wedding.
How many people were in the wedding?
2.
Including you?
Including me. Not including the bride and the groom. With the bride and the groom, there was 4.
Hold on. The other person in the wedding was the person you were walking down the aisle with?
Yes.
You were the only bridesmaid?
You were the only bridesmaid in this wedding?
Yes, which was totally fine. No
they didn't
worries.
Tell you?
No. Well, at that planning session, so I'm like, okay, and that's where I say, again, I'm not a bride, but that's, again, where I would say, that communication is key, because when I got to the planning session, when you tell someone, hey, actually, you're the only bridesmaid, you just don't know what to expect. And then I had already said yes, and I love this person very much, so I wanted to be there and help. But the expectations at that point, I realized were, okay, there is a lot that's going to be on me, because as a bridesmaid, you don't just go in to be seen, like we talked about earlier. You're going in to help.
Financially, with your time.
Support.
Absolutely.
You're just there to support.
Absolutely. So if you're hoping to plan the bridal shower, the bachelorette, the wedding, I'm going to need support. Mm-hmm. And thankfully, the family did step in. They did help out, as much as they could and where they could. But to give her the wedding of her dreams, there was an expectation that was really hard to meet, being one bridesmaid.
Well, that's an impossible situation.
Yeah, it was tough,
because it's a burden that you're willing to take on, but that's just a tough place to be.
Yes, it is. Well, there were parts of it that were tough. Obviously, again, I love my friend and I wanted to support her. Mm-hmm. But a great example was, there are things that you delegate. The bride will usually, or someone that's helping her will delegate to the other bridesmaids. And they were, being delegated to me at the time. Mm-hmm. And again, her family did step in. But there were things that were missed. Like, for instance, there was no one in place to help clean up after the bridal shower. So it fell to the bridesmaid, which was fine. Again, the family stepped in, and then after the wedding as well. But then you had the few people that were just exhausted, that had not planned on, maybe doing that part. And everybody has to rest somewhere, which is why you delegate things out.
Yeah.
And, so it made it really tough in that regard, but it again was worth it. She married the man of her dreams. They're doing great wedding. But it was an eye opener because that was the first time I was the only bridesmaid for like a full on wedding. And it did make it hard.
So I have two questions. First of all, do you think it was like an oversight or an undersight? And by undersight, do you mean like they thought, oh, she's great, she knows how to do this, so therefore she can do it? Excuse me. Or do you think it was an oversight where they were like, they didn't even think to have more people? They just thought, I only want one because I want a small wedding.
I think what it was, because I had asked, and it was like, well, you know, my significant other wants a really small wedding. He has one person that he wants. And so I'm choosing one friend that's, you know, been a childhood friend. And I don't think those things had come into play. She had never been a bride before. And of course I had been a bridesmaid. So once I got to the first planning session and I realized that there would not be other bridesmaids, you know, I think that's when I realized that maybe it was an undersight, that she had not fully realized that I may not be able to make her dream wedding happen.
How many components it takes to pull something like that off. Yeah. I mean, it's one thing, like, if you're just going to the courthouse, or, like, I know some people who've had really cute destination weddings where you only need just the witness or whatever. But if you're wanting a wedding, you gotta have a wedding party.
And a full bridal party. And again, her family was awesome. They did step in, but it was still tough in the sense of, you know, if I needed the help, usually it doesn't matter what time of day, you have a bridesmaid thread going, you have, you know, hey, somebody needs to do this, we need to delegate, so one person's taking care of the flowers, the other one's getting the games, the other one's getting the decor. It's just a different feel when you don't have
the team,
someone else to depend on, you know, to get that done for the bride.
And you talked about boundaries, but practical advice, what would you tell someone? There might be someone listening right now who's in the same position. So, you know, a bride is expecting a lot, but they don't have a lot to offer as far as, you know, being able to produce an entire team out of one person. What would you say to them?
I would definitely recommend that they have a conversation, because the bride may not even be thinking about it.
Not even realize.
At all in that. She's happy. She's looking forward to things. She's not realizing, like, oh, wow, this is a really heavy load for one person to try to figure out. And of course, as a bridesmaid, your whole goal is to help make this bride's dream come true.
Yeah.
You know, and so I would sit down and have a conversation. I've been in weddings where the bride nor the groom really had any money at all. And we've had conversations, and it worked. Everybody was able to pull together, whether it was their creativity, things they had, or, you know, somebody was able to bless and help out, but everyone was able to pull together. That would not have happened had there not been a conversation and expectations set. Sometimes they change. The expectations may change. So I want clear expectations, and I know I said that earlier, but sometimes they do change. And you have to understand and work within that. But as long as you have that conversation and you set some boundaries as well, I think it'll work. Like for me, I would have to, I think in other situations, you know, people would be like, okay, everyone give $300 for the bridal party. There's 7 of us, everybody give $300. Well, I don't have $300 to give. Can we all sit down? Let's see what the bride wants. What type of menu? What's the theme? What can we do?
How can we get creative?
Yes, and how can we split this up to where everybody can financially meet, you know, again, in those sort of weddings where people have said that some bridesmaids were too scared to speak up. So it came down to the end and they gave nothing. And, you know, when we're reaching out like, hey, you know, where's your half? They're like, oh, I'm sorry, I have nothing to give. Well, then that falls back on everyone else. So then we're giving, you know,
more than you even expected.
And we may not have more to give.
Yeah.
And so that's why conversations need to be had. And I don't think anybody should be embarrassed. I've been in weddings, you know, where the bride's family, they were very well to do. And we didn't have to pay for anything. We flew to Las Vegas for her bachelorette. We had beautiful dresses. I mean, we paid for gifts and the such for her. Of course, she was one of our best friends. But, you know, the expectation of us was to have fun with the bride and do anything that she needs. And we, of course, still help to do invitations and decorate. We still worked very hard, but the expectations were different there.
Yeah.
But there was also a conversation.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest still is, you need to sit down and have a conversation.
Yeah. That's excellent advice. And just to kind of tag into what you said about you didn't have to have the same strains as maybe a traditional wedding and the one that you're talking about where the family was able to take care of it. In the situation I was in, that woman took care of it because she loved the family. She loved the bridesmaids. She didn't have to have us all at her house. She didn't have to buy us dinner that night and buy us all this stuff. But she knew we didn't know what we were doing, and she wanted us to have fun. So if the bride's expectation is, this day is my day, this is how I want it, this is what it's going to be, and we're going to get into Bridezillas here a little bit later, so I don't want to jump ahead, but even if you don't want to have a conversation in front of the entire team, because then you might feel like you have to get defensive, well, no, I can't do that, and then you get panicky, and then it is embarrassing. If it's something that you know that your bride, especially if you're close to them, is going to expect much, much more than you can give, have a private conversation with them instead of in front of the team, and offer your services elsewhere. Listen, if standing next to you on your special day means it's going to cost me more than I can give, then I'm so sorry. I want to be there for you and I want to be a part of your day, but I just can't do that.
But you know what? Most of the time, at least in my experience, the brides have been really great about being like, hey, I totally understand if that's too much. And a lot of times, we wouldn't even really bother the bride with it because there would be, a bridesmaid that would be, let's say, over collecting the money. And then you go to them.
Typically, do you find it's typically the maid of honor who does
yes,
that?
Typically. It's very rarely the bride, especially for the parties. I've never actually done it where it was the bride. It is usually always a bridesmaid or a maid of honor, and people will go to them and say, hey, using the $300 example again, I know we're supposed to give $300 for the bridal party, and I know that sounds expensive, but people have wanted more. Okay, that's where it just depends. And if you're like, I just don't have it, but I do have 150, and I can help with setup. I can also arrange the team for teardown, and I can help with the games. Yes, all of those things are still time and money, depending on, not everyone has people who can tear down and set up at their beck and call. I've been in weddings where they've paid teams.
Yeah.
So, even if you offered your services that way, usually it works out. Nobody gets at least in my experience, where they get that aggressive over, as long as you communicate. Yeah. It gets bad when you don't, or you guys, where you make little groups and, everybody's against each other. Then it gets bad.
That reminds me of another point, and we can get into this later on, or we can go into it right now. But when to involve the bride in issues that happen just between the bridesmaids, or financially, like you said, that the bride was hardly ever the one collecting the money. But for me, I had no idea. My maid of honor took care of everything for the shower.
Yeah,
so
the bride doesn't need to know anything. That should not even be a stress.
I was talking about right at the beginning when she asked you to be a part. So I'm talking about those pre-conversations, I'm in a tough place right now, and then she can tell her maid of honor, hey, this is her situation, but then it doesn't have to be a whole
yes, I agree. So if somebody had lost their job, and the bride knew that, but she still wants her to be a part.
Yes,
right.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Not telling the bride, no, I can't afford to shower. No, I'm talking about right out of the gate. Yes, I want to be a part, and I would understand if you no longer want me to be a part because of this, but this is my situation, and then letting her take it from there.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kayla, keep going.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I had no idea what my bridesmaids spent. I still don't know the exact number, but I remember hearing something later, and I was like, really? And she was like, my maid of honor was like, yeah, but everyone was fine. Nobody was late, or it was all good. I was like, oh my word. Yeah. So I guess the question is if there were issues, or if there, whatever, when to tell the bride, hey, these people are acting up.
Yeah.
Honestly, for the shower, I think the bridesmaids just need to get it together. If it comes down to the main wedding, of course, the bride needs to know if the flowers weren't ordered, or if that was somebody's task, or something wasn't taken care of. Yes, but for the shower, I had where I was in a bridal shower, and another bridesmaid, she wanted flowers that were as tall as the bride. Fake flowers.
Stop.
They were very expensive. The bride was not, I don't think the bride was like aware that was not a thing that she had wanted.
That just seems very ambitious for a shower.
It was very ambitious. It was also going to be on the side of a hill, and it was going to be like a tea party. Well, the bride did not come up with this idea, and that's why I said, you know, sometimes people will want like $300-$400 per person because decor and the such can be very expensive.
Uh-huh.
Well, the group of bridesmaids, we are all working class. That's where I'll leave it at. We're working class. No one had that amount, and this is not a bash towards this other bridesmaid at all. She wanted to put on a beautiful Alice in Wonderland type tea party, and that is great. But if we're getting like flowers for her to walk through there that are as tall as her, the flowers were 50 something a piece. If we're gonna get 10 or 20 of those flowers, you know, it all starts adding up, and then it was like, then let's get white gloves, let's get
nickel and
teacups.
diming you. That's gouging you.
And so, you know, again, all they were wanting was the absolute best for this bride. So there were no hurt feelings, there were no anything. But at that point, I thought, okay, let's sit down with the bride and see what her aesthetic is more. We know what she wants for her wedding, but what are a few more of her favorite things? And we are really going to mold this to her.
Yeah.
Well, so come to find out, she was more of like a wildflower type girl. She loved wildflowers and things like that. And so we went more in that way, and it was much more cost effective than the Alice in Wonderland theme, which was still really cool. It was very unique. I had, you know, it was just a really cool theme.
Yeah.
But it was not doable for the group that was there, and it wasn't really the bride. It was a great idea from the bridesmaid, but that was like more her tune. She's funky, cool, outgoing, and that's amazing. And her wedding one day will be amazing. But the bride, she is very quiet. She's very sweet, very demure and cutesy. And the wildflower theme that we did worked out great. It was totally her. And we did the candles, you know, staggered, and it was just very pretty, and it worked out. And so, you know, we did have to go to the bridesmaid, or the bride then.
Yeah.
And kind of ask. We didn't have to go and tell her, you know, hey, you need to get on to so-and-so and get this taken care of.
Kayla would have loved it if we had come to her. She tried to come downstairs while we were in the middle of our planning session, and we kicked her out. She's like, and got mad. I was like,
yes.
We were all like, get out of here.
I was upstairs, trapped in my room. All my bridesmaids were there downstairs.
If you can avoid it, I really think that you should know the bride well enough to make
the
it.
party for her.
Yes.
She wanted to be all up partying with us, and we're like, get out. Also, I'll have you know, we did come in under budget on your bridal shower.
Oh, under budget?
Yeah.
Oh.
So we set a budget for $125 each out of your, how many people do you have? Like 8 or 9?
11 bridesmaids.
11. Okay, so plenty of budget. And even when Karina said that, she's like, it probably won't end up being this much, but as long as we're all willing to do this, then if that's a comfortable number for everyone, then we'll be able to maybe splurge in some areas. But we ended up coming under, so we only had to do like $80 each. So that's like you don't have to like shoot on the low end just to make people feel good.
Right.
But also if you can find a comfortable number, you might come in under and be able to put that money elsewhere or give it back to the bridesmaids because that's their hard-earned money and they need it too. Yeah. But so I don't know what numbers you heard unless it was for like your bachelorette or something, but the
probably that
under
that's
budge.
Amazing, and that's good. And you guys all agreed on that, which was really nice. I wish for this particular wedding that we didn't need to go to the bride. We didn't go to her with tattling. I just needed to know more so what was her style and what was she feeling so that we could work better. It was getting so far off. Then it was like we need to get straw hats and, you know, again, very cool. I actually love the idea. I think it would be fun for like a ladies' day. But
what kind of straw hats are we talking about here?
Like, you know, like Heidi running in the hills. Not Heidi Lewis, like Heidi from the character.
Oh, those like, kind of straw hats.
Yes. With gloves. Super cute. You're sitting on a hill. Okay. You're having like a tea party. But again, it was going to be in the 90s, the day of her shower. So it was just trying to find something that was more the bride. And we did it and it worked.
Yeah, sometimes you need to have the visionary to have one side and then you need to have the reality on the other side. They meet in the middle so that you're not having something boring, but you're not having something that's going to kill everybody.
And then I think when you go tattling to the bride often, it kind of ruins the experience for her because she gets very emotional. Sure. You know, it just can get really messy. And then if she's giving you advice and you go tell someone else and another bridesmaid hears and it seems like she's being talked about, it gets really nasty. Chaotic. You know? Yeah. So, again, you have to put yourself aside because it's not a you. Yes, you're a bridesmaid. You're standing up there. You're supporting her. People are going to see you. But you're up there to, whatever her fairy tale is, you're up there to make her feel and look the absolute best. And that's what matters.
That is amazing because that's really what you're aiming for, is to celebrate the bride but not kill yourself in the process. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we are going to be talking Bridezillas and more of Monique's experience as a bridesmaid. So we'll be right back. All right, we all are rested and recuperated because that first we had to pause a lot to laugh because Monique is here, and so therefore we're just losing it every 5 seconds. And it's not our fault; it's her fault. But absolutely, we're back and we're better than ever.
Yeah. So, I thought about this during the break. So tagging back to what you said about, like, when it's appropriate to let the bride know when it's not. I heard a story one time about a bride that there was some drama going on between a few of the bridesmaids that was, like, unrelated to the wedding, but kind of sort of also not, because they were complaining about the groom. It was all sorts of mess. So what ended up happening was there was something said during the shower setup, if I understand correctly. There was something said during the shower setup, and a couple bridesmaids heard it, and a couple other bridesmaids heard it. Well, one set of bridesmaids chose to tell the bride the night before the shower.
Stop it.
That was said. The others didn't. They told her way later, like after the wedding. So this bride was up until, like, I think she said, like, 3 a.m. the morning of her shower, just sorting out. Oh, my gosh. And there were, like, 5 bridesmaids present, and I was like, every single one of those bridesmaids should not have let that happen.
Absolutely not.
Why do you need to be up at 3 a.m. the morning of your shower unless there is actually something very wrong?
So this must have been, like, a big wedding party if we have, like, pockets forming.
Yeah.
Okay.
My understanding.
So was the groom being problematic, or was this just like a perception? How would that even have come up?
No, it was very stupid, dramatic things. The whole thing was dumb. Yeah. So, yeah, but she was telling me that there was a set of bridesmaids that heard it and told her immediately, and that's what blew it up at 3 a.m. the morning of her shower. And then another couple of bridesmaids told her months after she was married. They came up to her and said, I forgot to tell, or it didn't come up to her, it just came up in conversation, and, like, I forgot to tell you we heard this, and she was like, oh yeah, I know.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That is wild.
Yeah. You have to be so careful. I mean, the bride already has so much stress, and you've got to remember, she's going through a lot. Like, her whole life is about to change.
Yeah.
Sometimes she's moving states. Moving away from her family, moving out for the very first time ever in a lot of instances that we're used to, you know. And so you have to be so mindful. I've seen, too, just at a distance, where people would literally bash the bride and the groom and be in the wedding. I'm serving up the tea.
Oh, y'all. I have even a story about this.
Situations.
Okay, and it's just not okay. And you see the bride just... She's calling meetings, trying to get everything settled, trying to take care of the bridesmaids. And I'm like, nay. Like, you're not Dr. Phil. No. You are the bride. Enjoy yourself. Like, if they can't take the heat, baby, do not get near the fire. And because this is not about you.
There we go. And now the bride is dealing with probably personal hurt feelings.
Yes.
Because it's like, I trusted you, and now not only are you not helping my dream come true, you're hurting me as an individual.
And I feel like a lot of times they don't want to, like, there's such like a, you know, stigma, is that the right word, around being a bridezilla. So they don't want to say anything, so they'll maybe say something to, like, one bridesmaid, and they'll be weeping, and, you know, they're like, I'm just so frustrated because blah blah blah. I'm like, no, it shouldn't even be that way. Like, if you have a frustration, come to us. That's what we're here for. A. B, no one should be bashing the bride or the groom if you are part of the bridesmaid party. Like, if you don't like the groom, don't be in the wedding.
Yeah. Are you ready for a story about that? A problematic bridesmaid?
Yes.
I was not in this wedding, This is from years ago. So if you're trying to piece it together, you're not going to be able to because it was a different era of time. The bridesmaids were all childhood friends, and they had grown apart over the years, but when it was time to get married, who do you call on? The people that either you have always dreamt of, the ones you were doing, or if you don't really have any friends, you just kind of get back to where you were, right? So she gets her people, they're all dinking around doing their stuff, and one little bridesmaid just did not like the dress. And so she throws this whole hissy fit about the dress, forgetting that this is not about her. So her solution to her self-made problem was to and go around and talk to all the other bridesmaids and say, oh, I hate it so much, and oh, it's the worst, and oh, blah, blah, blah. Some of them legitimate grievances, some of them not, and goes around and tells, I think, every person in the party, if you quit, I will. Telling people to drop out of this other person's wedding.
That's At that horrible. Point, is it even like a friendship? Like,
it's
what is
not.
That?
It's like frenemy,
it's
and
like,
you do not need.
If
we are gonna make one point in this podcast, and back me up, girlies, you do not have to have frenemies or obligations in your wedding.
Right.
Yes.
And you know what? I think it's best, even when you have a misunderstanding as a bridesmaid to another bridesmaid, that you have to be very careful, very mindful, and very respectful to not openly disrespect other bridesmaids, because it will get big enough to where it does get back to the bride.
Yeah.
So if you feel like someone hasn't helped enough, you don't go to all the other bridesmaids and be like, they're so lazy. They did nothing in this wedding. They blah, blah, blah. Talk all you want after the wedding, but when you do that, I've noticed it always someone ends up dragging
It's going to
the
be
bride
messy.
into it.
It's going to be messy. And first and foremost, you have got to, once you agree and once you say, I would be honored to stand by your side, it is immediately not about you anymore.
100%.
Your one shining moment was when they gave you the bride posal, the bridesmaid
that's all.
rosal, whatever it's called. That's it. And you, honestly, you don't even need to get one of those. That's a little perk. That's just them being nice. If you are willing to stand by the bride during her day, the second you say yes, it's no longer about you. You can have your boundaries, and you are absolutely need to do that. You don't have to go broke. You don't have to do any of these things. But when it comes to drama and it comes to tearing down the happiness and the flow that is
and
about
playing
the wedding,
the victim, because there's some weddings, I've been in weddings where it's not about the bride or the groom at all. One or two bridesmaids literally made the entire thing about themselves, cried victim. I'm like, you guys, let's work together. Why is everyone fighting? Why are we trying to fire and hire each other? That is not, we don't get to choose who's in the wedding. We don't get to choose how the wedding look like that. We are here literally as moral supports and to back up that bride.
And you'll probably never have to work with those people again.
I will not.
It is the circle of the bride, and whether they are cohesive, it's a cohesive circle, doesn't really matter because it's about the bride.
Yes.
Yeah.
So going to being about the bride, what advice would you give to girls who are dealing with a bridezilla? I would imagine that in your tenure as bridesmaid, you've dealt with a bridezilla or two.
I have, but you know what? I think a lot of times we misinterpret someone who is very organized and knows what they want as a bridezilla. Now, there really are. I've worked with real ones too that are just like, if you gain too much weight, they don't like. Again, I've been in weddings where people, they cut their hair, they dye their hair and the such, and one would have dyed their hair blonde, and she wanted everybody's hair to be dark, so she was the only blonde. And again, hey, I am not the bride, so I don't know what it's like to be in that position.
That's giving bridezilla.
I think a part of me, though, does understand, because I do like structure and I do like order. I don't always have it in every area of my life, but I do like it. And so when somebody knows what they want and they're able to communicate that to me, I work better. So if you tell me at the beginning, I'm getting married in a year, I want everybody to wear this long sleeve dress that only goes up to a size 12 or 14 or whatever. So, but when you do stuff like that, you also have to think about who you're asking to be your bridesmaid. A girl, I haven't talked to her in years, so she's not from church. She had stipulations like that, but she had a cousin who did not fit her stipulations, and it made it very hurtful for her cousin. It made it very hard.
Yeah.
So that's what I think is the up to the point. So like, if the bride is expecting that before she even asks people. So I said that once you agree to be a bridesmaid, it's no longer about you. I feel like if that kind of stipulation is being made, that precedes the point to where it's not about you. Like, that's what came before.
Well, and you can communicate
absurd.
that in the beginning.
That's absurd. If you are going to ostracize people from your wedding based off of size, that is a bridezilla.
Well, we had like a book. So we had a book of do's and don'ts. She was just like
also
on it.
An absolute jerk.
But I loved some things that she did. I really loved some things, but I communicated with her. Like the day of her wedding, she had makeup artists coming in. So I just let her know, hey, that is not something that I can participate in, or I will be. Not that I can't. I will not be participating in that. So that's not that budget for that. We can move it elsewhere if needs be, but that's not something I will be doing. Which she knew that before I was a bridesmaid. Mm-hmm. So she respected that, but everyone else had to follow that. I did communicate before time. Mm-hmm. So we were not getting to the day of, and then she's thinking like, oh, she's never said anything, so maybe she's okay with it. Cool, my pictures are going to be how I want it. And then I get there, and she's freaking out. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So what I appreciated is she had an idea of what she wanted. She had started planning. She had started putting together. She was very structured. She was very organized. Her sister was helping her. She was very structured and organized. They were able to pass things off to people. We got them done. Everybody was open for communication. Surprisingly, no one fought in the wedding. It was still stressful. I wouldn't say it was the easiest wedding I was in because of the fact she did have a lot of demands. But I appreciated them because I knew about 90% of them at the beginning. You know, some things change and you have to allow for change. People change their mind.
So then what... Okay, but there's got to be a difference between a structured bride and a bridezilla. One with a lot of expectations clearly explained. Then what causes those nightmarish bridezilla situations?
You know, for some of them, I think it's probably just stress. Mm-hmm. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of emotions. If things did not turn out the way that they wanted, like let's say they wanted their hair a certain way, the hairdresser gets there, it's too hot in the room that they're doing it in, their curls die. So they start crying and freaking out. And, you know, and I'm not saying that that's necessarily, it's hard for me to really call people bridezilla because I think there's an expectation that they have. And when it's not being met, they react maybe differently than we would react.
So, you in your experience, have you ever had a bride that was just a brat?
Okay.
I'm not saying that everyone has to be, but
yes.
You cannot tell me that you've not worked
with some bride
that's not been a nightmare. Like
yes, I definitely. I don't want to call them a nightmare. I just think, again, expectations. So there was one wedding I was in. We had been there decorating all night, and at the last minute they changed their mind and they wanted hanging jars with lights and, you know, all of these things, which was totally fine. But then it went from us being able to go home.
I'm sorry, is this
like,
the night before the wedding?
Yes.
That is not totally fine, buddy.
It's instead of us going home
nice.
at 3 a.m., we're going home at like 8 a.m. and the wedding is at, let's say, 6 p.m., but everybody's got to be at the church by 9 a.m. because we're going to do breakfast with the bride. And there was so much going on.
Slept for less than an hour.
So we were completely exhausted
my
the day of the wedding, which, again, it's not about us. But to a degree, I really do think for us to show up and be there for the bride.
Can't be there in your state that, you know, the beautiful whatever, in your right mind. With that kind of expectation, you probably got the puffy eyes and like you know you haven't slept. You're tired. You can't even be engaged.
Yeah.
And I think what makes some bridezillas, believe it or not, this is going to be crazy to say, is the family. Because the family has expectations that they want of all the other bridesmaids, and so they're sometimes unrealistic. Like, okay, so this is a great example. I've been in so many weddings. I have so many examples. I was in a wedding and they had a huge reception. Okay, massive. I mean, great. Hundreds of people showed up to this reception. And a lot of their family was in the wedding and a lot of their childhood friends. that were not from church were also in the wedding. And I don't think the bride and groom, I'm sure the bride and groom know nothing about this. They were off in La La Land going to the marriage supper of the Lamb. Bless God. But the family that was also in the wedding, they were like, oh, you know, the few of you that are not family, you guys are the ones that are going to clean up this. I mean, when I say hundreds upon hundreds, porcelain plates. I'm sorry, I have been up all night decorating for this wedding, and the other bridesmaids did not show up because they wanted to be with the bride because they were the bride's family. So they had to be with the bride the night before, which left only 3 of us that were not to stay all night while they were with the. And I get it, it's the last night, but unfortunately, and I know people are going to disagree because they're like, you're not a bride, you don't understand. I am not a bride, but I have been a bridesmaid. That is really hard because it puts a massive load on just a few people.
There are not some superior bridesmaids that are the shining star bridesmaids and then the dull bridesmaids. The ones that have to do the work, the ones that don't. You're all in this together, family or not. Like,
that's what I'm saying.
That
like, you're not the star.
Yeah.
The bride is the star.
Yeah.
So if she wants to go and be with her mom and they just have a cuddly time, that's great. But if there are cousins and siblings that are part of the wedding, they need to help.
Yeah.
You cannot leave 3 people. Then you feel like an outsider. You feel overwhelmed even because you're like, I need to make her dream a reality. I don't think I'm going to make it. There's such a massive load. Then after the reception, it was like, okay, we're the family, we're going to go rest. You guys need to pick up. And that's where expectations come in. We obviously were not made aware of that. At the time, we did know that there were crews put together. We did not know we were manning those crews, the 3 of us. So I said, absolutely not. I will not be staying with the 3 of us manning this crew all night. I was already here all night. I haven't slept in, it's going to be 48 hours that I haven't slept. She's married. I'm happy. She's one of my best friends. I'm so glad that, she's off on her great adventure. I am not staying and cleaning up this mess. And it was at a gorgeous, they had rented a gorgeous hall out in, somewhere beautiful. I'm not going to say it because they're somewhere in Pentecost and the church. And they had rented a beautiful hall and all of that. So there were chairs that had to be put back together so that the people that they rented the chairs could come pick. It was a massive amount of work. That is just not feasible to leave for 3 people to figure out. And you communicate. The family that's going to go rest now communicates on like, well, you rested the night before. Yeah. So if you're baby girl, you're a bridesmaid.
You got your rest.
Like you rested the night before with the bride. You were nowhere to be found. And you need to be here tonight.
Okay, that brings up a good point. Would it be productive to upfront split the duties if it was going to be that dramatic? If it was going to be set up crew and clean up crew, like if they didn't have one, would it be productive to be like, okay, if you guys are going to be with the bride that night, then you have to be the ones that clean up. We'll do the setup, but you have to do the cleanup.
It was communicated that there was another crew, but people were not showing up. Things fall behind, as they do with anything, with conferences or, you have an expectation. Okay, this needs to be done by this time. That expectation is not met, so everybody is scurrying. So it was things like that. So we were not necessarily put on cleanup duty, and I was happy to help, but it could not be you 3 are in charge. You see this through until the last dish is washed. That was the other thing. We had to wash the dishes and put them in crates. Wash, dry, and put them back in these crates. I cannot stay there all night and do that. Again, we had not slept at all the night before. Like 3 of us, not a wink of sleep. We had stayed there until it was time to meet with the bride, get dressed. So the wedding was not till that night, but there were pictures and everything. So that whole day was taken when we're like blacking out on our feet. Yeah. Like falling asleep quite literally on our feet. And this is no disrespect to the bride. Again, I am positive she had no idea. To this day, I don't think she has any idea that this happened, which is why I can tell this story because I talked to her 100 times since then. Yeah. This has never come up. She has no idea. But I think, and honestly, Lord willing, if I ever get married, I don't think I will have my bridal party be the cleanup crew. No. They already have such a massive load to make the day go as smoothly as possible. Yeah. They're there to meet my every need, my every demand, anything I want. I know they're there to take care of. They need to go and be done after the wedding. They should not be obligated to stay at the church 3, 4, 5 in the morning.
Yeah.
I want a completely separate crew as a thank you. And not, it's not disrespectful, but for me, it would show a sign of respect.
Yeah.
If I was like, hey, y'all I'm going to go enjoy myself. Y'all go enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at that point, the festivities are over, and everything that they had been working for months, it's done. It's done. Now it's, I don't want to say burden lifted, because it's probably, an honor, but it's just,
I think it's
your job, your what do they say? Your watch is done.
Yeah. And there needs to be another crew to take that load off, because they've helped carry that load. They've carried you.
Yeah.
They've carried the bride and the groom through. At that point, someone else needs to help. So there needs to be a whole nother crew that you can depend on. That even if you're paying a crew to come in, if that's what it takes, I am 100%. I am not for the bridal party doing.
Yeah, that's a lot to expect.
Yeah.
This is just part 1 of the Always a Bridesmaid series with Monique. We are going to be having part 2 next week, so stay tuned, but have a wonderful rest of your week, and we will see you in part 2 next week.
See ya.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Friendeavor the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you enjoyed today's content, leave a review and share with a friend. You can find the show notes on our website, www.friendeavor.net, and in the description of this episode.
Friendship is a journey. It's an endeavor. We'll see you next time on Friendeavor.